Welcome, everybody. I'm John Barron from Word on Fire Catholic Ministries, and what we are doing today is seizing an opportunity. I'm here in Orlando, Florida, where the Good News Conference is about to get underway, and the two men who are delivering the keynote addresses at this very large gathering of Catholics just happen to be with me now. We've got Bishop Robert Barron and Father Mike Schmitz, and it's no doubt that they are maybe predominantly responsible for the fact that this conference is sold out at this point. So everybody is thrilled and looking forward to seeing you two over the weekend. They, of course, are two of the most prominent and most widely followed Catholic churchmen in the U.S. They are master evangelists, speakers, authors. Bishop Barron is, of course, the founder of Word on Fire, and everybody knows Father Mike from his ubiquitous, energized, and very smart videos. Not to mention the Bible in a Year podcast, which earlier this year became the #1 podcast in the world and has held pretty steady since then. And though they are appearing on different days at this conference, we knew we couldn't pass up the chance to find some time to get them together for a conversation. Thanks to Father Mike and Bishop for making the time to make this happen. And here we go. Unrehearsed, unedited, unvarnished. Hopefully interesting conversation with two great leaders. I just talked about where you guys are now, what has developed with your careers, but I'm wondering if we can go back a little bit to the beginning. When you kind of first felt that something click inside of you, where you knew that something more important was happening with you with your Catholic faith, something that probably ultimately put you on the path to the priesthood. And I think in both cases something happened during the high school years. So, Father Mike?
Yeah, no, I thank you, and this is an incredible honor. For years, I've referred to myself as the poor man's Father Barron, and so this is. No, I can't say that anymore because I can't be the poor man's Bishop Barron. That's just the poor man's Father Barron. But back in, so I was raised Catholic, and I'm the fourth of 6 kids, and so Sunday Mass every single Sunday, and I would always say that in Catholic elementary school that I didn't like it. I didn't like going to church. But you could only, in my family, could only miss Mass if you were too sick to do anything else for the rest of the day. And so there were times where I attempted, but it's hard to get away with that when your mom's a nurse and your dad's a doctor. I fooled them a couple times. I don't think they were fooled. But at one point, when I was about 15 or so, I had this conviction. It's only an act of God's grace because I had this conviction, this awareness of personal sin. And it wasn't like anyone came into my life and pointed it out. Mm-hmm. It was, well, I know what the sins are because I went to Catholic school. I went to, go to Mass on Sunday. But all of a sudden it was like, oh my gosh, that's what I've done. And I remember thinking so clearly, I can't save myself. I need a savior. And it was ding, kind of one of those light bulbs of, oh my gosh, everything. They've given me the answer my entire life, but I never cared about the question. Mm. And so now all of a sudden I have the question, and the question is really, I'm desperate for an answer, and I have it automatically. And so I knew 2 things. I knew, one is I needed to pray, and I didn't know how to pray. And so I remember I had a rosary hanging on the bedpost, and my mom would pray the rosary every night, but I wasn't going to ask her, Mom, how do you pray the rosary? Because I thought she would freak out. And so I just thought, I went to a religious set on Wednesday night, and Mrs. Sophie Hagelin was our teacher, and there was this booklet called Youth Praise the Rosary. And I said, Mrs. Hagelin, can I borrow that booklet? Like, sure, you can have it, take it forever. And so I would have the booklet, have my rosary, and that's how I started learning how to pray. And then I knew I needed to go to confession, and I didn't know the rules as far as Saturdays, and that's when you have confession. But I knew where the priest lived, so I got on my bike and I rode across town and knocked on the door at 10 o'clock on a Tuesday morning, and he was there. And I always say he was there because priests only work 1 day a week. And I said, Father, can I go to confession? Sure, come on in. I went to confession, and I remember walking out of that rectory, and I had 3 clear thoughts in my head. My first was, God, thank you so much. I was just overwhelmed by gratitude of I walked in here with all this sin, and I'm walking out completely forgiven because of you, Jesus. Thank you so much. My second thought was, God, if you want me to be a priest, I'll hear anyone's confession anytime they ask. And I'd never thought about being a priest before, because if you don't like church, you don't think about being a priest too often. And my third thought was, so thank you, God. Second thought, if I'm going to be a priest, I'll hear anyone's confession anytime they ask. My third thought was, oh, she's really cute. Like, so that's set up the roller coaster of junior high, high school, whatever, college, of just kind of, God, what do you want me to do? But that was the beginning.
Yeah.
And where all of a sudden, everything they've been telling me mattered to me deeply. And it was the beginning. It was incredible.
Yeah. Well, and you had a similar encounter with grace in high school.
And you were right down the hall at the time.
Yeah.
But, first of all, most of my life I've been in seminary work, and so I've heard 1,000 stories of vocation and call. And I never tire them because I'm always fascinated by how God tailors his grace to a particular person. So Flannery O'Connor talks about the breakthrough of grace that happens in people's lives. And in the case of priests, it happens in a particular way, a very unique way. And so that was the way the Lord found, your heart. Mine was at Fenwick High School. I say John was down the hall because he was a year ahead of me at Fenwick. And it was early in the afternoon, and we were just in from the playground, as I remember. So it's all these sweaty guys. Fenwick was an all-guys school at the time. And this young Dominican friar taught us one of Aquinas' arguments for God's existence. And it's sort of like you. I'm born and raised a Catholic. I went to Mass every Sunday, and I never doubted God's existence. But I never thought about it deeply, never thought you could think about it deeply. And I don't know why, for some reason, it just hit me with an extraordinary power of the reality of God. And I started looking for books. This is, of course, long before the internet. And I went to our library and found this big tome on Thomas Aquinas, and tried to start reading this thing. And I didn't really understand it, but I was fascinated by it. And that's how God kind of broke into my life, though he was present to me, of course, as a Catholic kid. But that's the moment when things kind of, awakened in me. And that started me on the path, no kidding, that I'm still on. And when I chose my motto as a bishop, I chose Aquinas's, non nisi te domine, I'll have nothing except you. And Aquinas has followed me all my life. So I think of it, really, I think God's grace happened through a saint, through Aquinas, who kind of broke into my life and said, okay, I want you to do something. That's how it started for me.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
It's funny, you mentioned even just finding books.
Yeah.
I'll go back to my mom. Kind of like when I talk to our students, I say, how your moms have a stack of books that they want to read someday, a stack of magazines they want to read someday? Yeah. And they're all like, yeah. Like, that's my mom. She had all these Catholic books, these Catholic magazines, and tapes. And that was, I thought, well, what do I do now? And then, I'll borrow this book and this book. And through that, just reading those books, listening to those tapes, realizing, like you had mentioned, there's a way to think even more deeply about this. And I remember even just encountering the reality of the Eucharist, how Jesus is truly present. And I don't want to say I freaked out, I flipped out. But I remember running downstairs into the kitchen and to my siblings, do you know that Jesus is really present in the Eucharist? They're like, yeah. They're like, yeah. I said, no, that's really him. We know, moron. And I don't know if I was sick that day, or what, but that just was this, then I need to be close to him. Yeah. Because that's where he is. And it just hit. Yeah, incredible.
Did it become a voracious reading experience?
I read so much, yeah. It was just such a gift. So my best friends became people I didn't. See, this is why I'm the poor man's Father Barron, because I didn't go to Aquinas. I went to people who learned from Aquinas. So I love Dr. Peter Kraft. Was so significant. Bishop Fulton Sheen was so significant. C.S. Lewis. These people who made big concepts really accessible.
Well, let me tell you about Fulton Sheen, because so here I am, 14, 15 years old, and I get this big tome of Thomas Aquinas, and I'm trying to read it, and my father, our father, said to me, kiddo, maybe you could find something a little easier. And he mentioned Fulton Sheen.
Yeah.
So I went to the library and got this Fulton Sheen book, which did indeed make a lot of that easier. But reading was so important to me. That was a way in, which is why a lot of my work has been against this anti-intellectualism, which held sway, believe me, when I was a young guy. There was almost an animus against the intellectual life. And that's terrible in my judgment. That's the way I got into it.
Right.
And people, you mentioned Kraft. There's a whole generation of people, your age and younger, who were drawn back to the faith by Peter Kraft.
Oh, he's been so significant.
Who's an extraordinary teacher and a great writer. But books have played from, look at Augustine on, such a huge role in people's journey to the Lord.
Yeah, I would say that, and the kind of people that I was drawn to, I think are the kind of people, as we continue to talk, the people I emulate. And so I remember C.S. Lewis at one point, he was giving a talk to, I think it was seminarians, and I think it was called, they might have referred to themselves as youth ministers or youth pastors or something in the Anglican Church. And he said that he believed the final exam for people for the Anglican men before they get ordained shouldn't be answering big theological topics in a big theological way. It should be, here's a big theological topic, communicate this in a way that the ordinary dock worker can understand. And he said, because if you can't do that, we wouldn't send you to Burma if you didn't speak Burmese. We wouldn't send you to China as a missionary if you didn't speak Chinese. And so why would we send you to South London if you don't know how to communicate in such a way that the people living in South London could understand you?
I think I do remember that vaguely in Lewis, and it reminds me of Billy Graham said something similar.
Right.
Namely, he said any Christian preacher at the drop of a hat should be able to explain the gospel to any group that shows up. So if there's your church or whatever it is, hey, Bishop, a group of 6-year-olds have shown up. Okay, you should be able to drop of a hat to explain the gospel to them.
Yeah.
Bishop, a group of academics from Villanova have shown up. Explain the gospel to them. If you can't do that at the drop of a hat, you're not qualified.
Yeah.
And I've always thought that's right. Like, what is the gospel, and can you explain it to any group at any level?
Without dumbing it down.
Yeah, right. I'm doing it with integrity, but able to address people at different levels and all that. I think that is true.